Today we have something very special because this is the Nissan Frontier Hardbody Special Edition. But what we have right here is an actual Nissan D21 Hardbody, and this truck's owner, Tyler. How's it going, man?
Nice to see you.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing your truck down here.
Of course.
So let's start out with the old truck because that's where these trucks started out. And this is a 1995, right?
Correct.
So how did you find this truck?
I actually found this truck through the online auction site, Cars and Bids, Doug DeMuro's website.
Right.
It was located in southwestern Colorado in Durango. Ended up winning the auction. This was back in September of last year. Drove down there with my girlfriend, picked it up, brought it all the way home. Been living with it ever since.
And you said that this truck has been most of its life in California, right?
Correct. It was owned by a gentleman in California who sold it to his neighbor. He ended up passing it to his son, who ended up selling it, just posting it on the lot. You see those cars for sale on the side of the road. The gentleman I purchased it from, his mother saw it on the side of the road and knew he liked these 90s mini trucks. Called him, he bought it sight unseen, held it for about a year, and then I purchased it from him.
And it's really cool to find one in this condition because these trucks, a lot of them were worked hard because they're solid, reliable trucks. People abuse the hell out of these things. So finding one that doesn't have holes rusted in it, doesn't have a crushed bed, and all of that is pretty cool. And this very retro graphic on the side. This is sweet.
Indeed. Yeah, this one is in good condition, you know, a ding or two here and there, but the paint's in great shape. It's a little dirty. We just had a fun snowstorm here in Colorado. But it is in great shape, no rust.
Yeah, and check out the interior because this is also pretty impressive. Again, a lot of these trucks just get thrashed and the seats are torn up and the dashes are beat up, but this interior looks almost brand new.
I've had no problems with it. It's very durable, very reliable. You know, a lot of people wish they still made trucks like this.
Yeah, I know I do. And a little bit of history on these trucks. So these, the D21 Hardbody, started around 1985 and went on, at least in the US, until 1997. So this being a 95 is a pretty late model, and it's got the VG30E V6 under the hood and a 5-speed manual transmission. You mind popping the hood?
Of course, yes, that's correct. And I believe they even sold them all the way up until the early 2000s in other locations.
Yeah, I think I
like
saw
Mexico.
Maybe until 2008.
Yeah.
So these trucks went on for a long time in some other markets, but even here in the States, they're hugely popular. Not as many powertrains available here in the States. Some other markets got
Diesels.
some other cool options, like diesels, but this is still a really solid motor. Does have a timing belt that has to get done, I think, every 60,000 miles or so. And it's not like a powerhouse of a motor. It's 150 horsepower, 180-ish pound-feet of torque. How is it in the mountains?
At elevation, it struggles. I mean, I doubt it makes that just over the years anymore as well, but I'm a right lane queen.
Yeah, and, foot down going uphill.
6,000 RPM, it sounds good. It's a nice NA engine, so.
Yeah, and they're solid, reliable engines, which is the important part. Also pretty cool to have the manual transmission because it's a 5-speed.
Yes.
And you're not going to have it hunting gears all the time because old school automatics are just they're not the greatest things, especially up here in the mountains with steep grades. So a really cool powertrain. Now, if we step back and we compare that to this brand new Nissan Frontier, which is the Hardbody Edition, so it's made to be a little retro and have some of the, well, admittedly more 80s than 90s styling cues that these trucks had. This is a 3.8 liter V6, so a much bigger V6, 310 horsepower, so double the horsepower, 281 pound-feet of torque, so another 100-ish pound-feet of torque, and a 9-speed automatic. So obviously these trucks have come a long way as far as the powertrain goes, but still a V6.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, something pretty cool on your truck is that the way that it's spec'd, it's got a limited slip in the rear, doesn't it?
It does. It was kind of, from my understanding, a rare option. Hard to tell what criteria determined if you had it or not, but it does have the little sticker, LSD on the rear diff.
Which is way cool. So this Frontier has a pretty advanced traction control system that does a lot for it. And of course you can get a Pro 4X with a locker, which is nice. Selectable locker, always a good thing to have. But the way that these two are spec'd, they're almost kind of tit for tat because that actually has a mechanical limited slip diff, which is a super cool thing to have. And plus, you just can't go wrong with a 5-speed manual.
No, of course not.
Now, let's walk alongside these two trucks, and you can go ahead and close up the hood, because one of the most striking differences seeing these two side by side is their size difference.
Yes.
This new truck is like something like 1,600 pounds heavier than your truck, which weighs round about 3,000 pounds.
Correct.
Versus this at about 4,600. And then even though this truck has actually quite a bit of sidewall, which I like, look at the difference in the wheel size.
I believe those are 16-inch wheels on the older one, yeah.
Versus here, we've got a 17. So still not a massive wheel, but a pretty big difference there. And then your truck, is this the 6-foot bed, right?
This is the 6-foot bed. It's the king cab, so there are jump seats in the back that face towards each other, but you do have the 6-foot bed. There was an extended bed option. I think it was 7 or 8 feet, but this is a common configuration you see.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a little extra space in the cab.
Of course.
And then I'm assuming that this snug top was on here when you bought it?
It was. I don't know exactly when it's from. It looks pretty period correct to me, from, late 90s, early 2000s, but it's a nice topper.
So what is kind of the idea for you with this truck? Why'd you buy it, and how are you planning to use it?
Yeah, I wanted a real 4-wheel drive vehicle here in Colorado, given all the snow, so a transfer case. Wanted some ground clearance. I wanted a 6-foot bed so I could sleep in the back of it comfortably. I'm about 6 feet tall, and I wanted something cheap and reliable that many people love and drive them. You see them upwards of 400,000+ miles on these things. So
absolutely. Yeah.
My plan here is to kind of build out a little sleeper and maybe get a heated blanket, camping setup with some propane stove and kitchenette and all that fun stuff.
This is the perfect truck for that, a perfect Colorado truck, because it's something that you can take down a trail. It's narrow enough that you're not going to pinstripe a whole lot, and even if you do pinstripe, it's an old truck. It's meant to go down a trail and get beat up a little bit, but hopefully not too much, just because this one is so well preserved. And also a really cool topper, because this is a pretty high roof topper.
It is, yeah. And it came with the roof basket as well, which whistles in the wind. This thing doesn't need anything else holding it back, but I like the way it looks.
Yeah, and this is very much functionality driven, whereas if we go over to the new Frontier, a lot of what this special edition of the truck has is a little bit more form-based. So we've got a sport bar there in the bed, but that being said, still a pretty useful bed. Not a massive bed, but we've got some nice tie downs here. The rails, that system is always nice to have, so you can move some of your tie down points around. So definitely a lot of differences between the new truck and old, and actually probably the biggest of which, definitely the biggest of which, other than powertrain and size, would be this interior. So on the new truck, we've got a Fender audio system, still some pretty simple cloth seats. Yours was cloth too, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cloth.
But of course, we've got all the modern screens and gauges, and then a massive back seat, because that's become ever more important here on modern trucks.
Yes.
But as cool as it is to look at these trucks side by side, I think it'll be a lot cooler if we take them for a drive.
Let's do it.
All right, Tyler. Let's see how the old Hardbody drives.
Let's do it.
So this truck is something that you've had now for a couple months. What are some of your big things that you like about it, and what are a couple things that have maybe not been ideal?
What I love about it is how compact and narrow it is. I've got paper thin doors here with no airbags. That's the drawback, but look how easy it is to point the nose of this vehicle.
Yeah, it's
nice sharp corners.
Really easy to place, and it's very narrow. I mean, shoulder to shoulder, we're kind of right next to each other.
Yes.
But that's how these old school trucks are. They were designed to be compact. And you live around Denver?
I do. Yep. South Denver, there's no things like cup holders or things like that. But back then, the luxury truck wasn't really an existing option.
And being in the city too, having a more compact truck, I'm sure is nice.
Yes.
Like right here.
Yeah, it's great for street parking, bopping around town. It's when I put it on the highway and try to go through a mountain pass that I noticed a little lethargic engine.
So how does it accelerate? Let's see if we get on the throttle.
This is full throttle. It sings.
It moves. It's not fast, but at least at this speed and at this elevation and at this grade of angle on the road, it's plenty enough to keep up with traffic. I'm sure once you start pitching up I-70 going into the mountains is when it feels a little troubled.
Yeah, but what I do love about it is just how mechanical and old-fashioned it is. The throttle by wire, the no turbochargers on the engine, it is such a direct feeling from my right foot to the engine's feedback. Sure, it may not be powerful, but I know it's doing what I ask it immediately versus newer electronic cars where it's up to the tuning.
And if something needs to get fixed, it's all relatively simple and straightforward. And you have a very honest truck-like ride that you get from it. It doesn't beat you up or anything, but it's an old school truck kind of ride.
Right, and the torsion beam front suspension, I mean, I don't know too much about it. It seems to do its job. It holds up. You don't see them very common anymore, but a lot of these trucks from the 90s did have them. The Ranger. I don't know if the Tacoma did, but the Hardbodies did as well. So
and it works just fine. It's also pretty quiet in here, comfortable seats.
Yeah,
this is what I love about this era of vehicles, is that everything is so straightforward. There's no guessing. It's very intuitive. Like your HVAC controls are very simple.
Exactly.
And it's just a known quantity. You've even got hand crank windows here. So
hand crank windows, correct. I do have some nice options like auto mirrors. I can adjust those automatically. That's a nice option to have. They did have one model trim level above this, the SE, I believe, that did have automatic windows and whatnot. But you're right, this is all I need.
Yeah, no, this is exactly what a truck of this era is famous for. It's this kind of simplicity and honesty. So now we're in the brand new Nissan Frontier, and immediately first thing that you notice is it's not a manual transmission, which is, it's practical having an automatic, especially if you spend a lot of time in traffic, but I do miss shifting gears.
It is fun, and it's a rare option to find these days.
Yeah, there's only 2 trucks on the market that you can get a manual in. It's the Tacoma and the Gladiator. And other than that, everything else has gone automatic only. On the plus side, this is a 9-speed, which especially here in the mountains, and especially if you're pulling a trailer, having all those gears to choose from, it's pretty killer. The other nice thing about the new Frontier is the power. We get on it.
Immediately you notice.
Yeah, it doesn't throw you back into the seat, but once you build up through the rev range, it cruises itself along. 310 horsepower is nothing to shrug at.
And that's what the Frontier, the modern one, has going for it. A lot of people still want just a high RPM V6.
Yeah, and again, still no turbocharging like a lot of the mid-sized trucks are going to. So as far as brand new mid-sized trucks go, this one is still leaning a little bit more toward the old school side of things, even if you don't get the special hardbody edition.
Exactly, and there's a market for that. It's simple in here, there's big buttons, the screens aren't overbearing, and some people like that.
Yeah, and it's a cool truck. Very quiet in this interior, definitely a more modern, refined kind of ride. It's not quite as I don't know, what would you say in the old truck? Because the ride's not bad in the old truck. This is just a little bit more sorted out, I guess.
The old one just feels like an old truck.
Yeah, which to me is what you want out of it, but certainly with this new truck,
you're insulated well.
Yeah, the steering, the suspension, the noise level in the cabin, everything is very modern. It doesn't give you anything really to complain about, but I kind of like the excitement of driving the old truck.
Oh, me too. It brings a smile on my face every time I start it up.
Yeah.
It's probably not the most efficient or safest way to commute, but it sure is fun. And maybe in 30 years, people will think the same of these things. Who knows?
Well, and maybe, but the other cool thing about the older truck is the size of it too, because this now is almost the size of what full-size trucks used to be.
That's right.
And it feels that way. You look out over this hood, and it doesn't have the same visibility. We got this very blocky hood, and even blocks some of your vision. So there's a lot of cool things about the old truck. I'm partial because Tommy and I spent a lot of time on the Classics channel, and we love classic vehicles. And this new Frontier is an objectively better truck. But the old truck is just cool.
It's so cool, and I'm gonna keep it forever.
Well, again, a huge thanks to Tyler for bringing his truck all the way up from Denver and being willing to put it side by side with the new Frontier, because it's really cool to see these next to each other. Also, you're really good on camera.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was fun to bring it up here, show it around, compare it to the new one. I'm excited to test it out once the snow melts and I can get it up on some trails, see what this little thing can do.
Absolutely, and maybe even when it warms up a little bit and we can go hit some trails, we'll have you back so that we can run some trails with you and shoot a video doing that. But for now, that's all. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and we'll catch you all in the next video.